So our first physiology class is about the tissues. When we go to the human body, we can see different layers in the human body, and those are tissues. We have different types of tissues that today we want to discuss about two of them, which are epithelial tissue and connective tissue. And later, we will have a separate class for the nervous tissue in the nervous system class. It's going to be a very long one. It's going to be a very complicated one, but important. Of course, we are not going to discuss about the neurological aspect of the human body in the base of the physiology. We're just talking about the biology of the nervous system. So you are going to know the basic things, but still, I believe it could be a kind of challenging topic if you don't pay attention. And also in the next week we will discuss about the muscle tissue, right? We will discuss about the muscle system. We will discuss about the different types of muscles that we have in the human body, the locations, the functions, and also I will discuss about how the contraction happens in the muscles system. So today we want to discuss about epithelial tissue and connective tissue, which are more general than nervous system and muscle system. So let's start with the epithelial tissue. And guys, in the physiology classes, in all of them, when we want to start a system, when we want to start a kind of process to discuss about the topics, I start with the functions of the system. I start with the function of the physiology. Then I will go to the topic step by step, make it more complex, and at the end we will understand how the system works. So epithelial tissue, it's a very, very basic type of human tissue. For example, your skin is a kind of epithelial tissue. So we have different types of epithelial tissue in different locations with different functions. One of the main functions of the epithelial tissue, it's in the skin. It's about the protection. We're discussing about the protection, and it's very, very important to remember that epithelial tissue in some parts, exactly which parts? The parts that they have a kind of access to the outside. I will discuss about it. For example, like oral cavity. For example, like the anus. For example, like the skin. These are the parts that in the human body they have epithelial tissue, and the function of the epithelial tissue is about protection. We have another type of epithelial tissue, for example, in the intestine, in the kidney tubules. And you have to remember this type of epithelial tissue is responsible. It's kind of responsible for the absorption and reabsorption. The word of the absorption and reabsorption, some people do mistakes. That's a very important thing to remember. But they are different. Absorption happens in the digestive system. Absorption happens in the digestive system when you eat something and you want to digest it, or it's better to say you want to absorb it. It happens in the digestive system. We have another word which is reabsorption. Remember, reabsorption, it happens in the kidney. Reabsorption, it happens in the kidney when we filter the blood and we take the unnecessary materials, at least 180 liters. And I think during the previous class I mentioned about it. 180 liter, it's the very, very first amount of the fluid that we filter. And at the end, it will be about 1.5 liter in a normal day for a healthy person. So about 178.5, it's reabsorbed to the human body. So absorption, when you eat something and it enters into the human body. Reabsorption, it means that you filter the fluid of the human body, then you will reabsorb it. We will discuss about absorption and reabsorption in details, what will happen during these processes in the digestive system, and the moment that we are going to discuss about the kidney structure. Another thing is about secretion. It's possible. Yes, it's very common. It's possible for the epithelial tissue. And one of the main locations that we can see this function from the epithelial tissue, it's in the digestive system. Okay. It's in the digestive system. And it's very important to remember. For example, in the stomach, we have some uh, cells, it's better to say epithelial cells, that they release materials. Later, later we will discuss about the digestive system. Later we'll discuss about the digestive system, and you will see how you will see the structure of the stomach, and you will see how the cells they release the materials. So let's discuss about the characteristic and features of the epithelial tissue, because when we go to the connective tissue we have to compare. That's a very important thing, because there is a kind of possibility to give you the questions to compare the features of epithelial tissue and connective tissue, and you must be able to name at least two or three of them. So let's go to the epithelial tissue. One of the main things about the epithelial tissue is that mainly they cover the surface. Okay, this surface could be toward the outside of the human body, or sometimes when we are in the lumens, for example, in the digestive system, this surface it could be toward inside of the human body. So, for example, here could be the epithelial tissue. It depends on the location. So, for example, this is the structure of the skin. I want to look at the main picture of this structure, and later we will discuss in details. But look at the structure. You can see different layers of cells. At this moment, I don't want to discuss about the different layers of cells, but the more important thing for this slide is this basement membrane. Remember, epithelial tissue, always after the layer of the epithelial tissue, always we have the basement membrane. Most of the time, maybe always it's not correct, but most of the time we have the basement membrane. It's very important to remember. It's very important to remember one thing about the basement membrane. It's that it doesn't have cells. So no cells in the basement membrane. You know what we have in the basement membrane? We have fibers. Fibers like collagen. We have polysaccharide molecules that they help the structure. I know that during the previous class we discussed about the polysaccharides, and maybe you have a question in your mind, say that, okay, we had the starch, it's in the plant cells, right? We had the glycogen, which is in the liver cells and muscle cells, as you told us, and it's a kind of a storage polysaccharide. And also, we have cellulose again in the cell wall of the plant cells. But what kind of polysaccharide do we have in the basement membrane? These are very complex polysaccharides. You don't need to study, you don't need to remember them. But if you really want to know what the function of this polysaccharide is, it's that they absorb the water and keep the structure flexible. So remember that they have fibers like collagen and also polysaccharides. So there is no cell in the structure of the basement membrane. What is the function of the basement membrane? The basement membrane, as you can see, is between the epithelial tissue and connective tissue, CT connective tissue. So there's a kind of connection between the epithelial tissue and the layers below the epithelial tissue, which is usually connective tissue. And basement membrane is a kind of uh, intermediate layer between these two types of tissues. So one thing is about keeping these two layers together. Another thing is about protection. Later, I will discuss how these layers of cells they help us. And if something happens, how the basement membrane will help us. And also, it helps for the migration of the cells and also in the filtration in the kidney, we have the basement membrane as well, which is very important. But more important to me is that I want you to remember that it's between the epithelial tissue and connective tissue usually. It's an intermediate layer that it attaches these two types of tissue together, and it has no cell. That's a very, very important thing. It has no cells. It has fibers and it has polysaccharides. But now let's discuss about the general things about epithelial tissue. In the epithelial tissue, we say that it's going to cover or line the body surface. Guys, there is a kind of confusion here sometimes. When we say that body surface, it doesn't mean that it must always be a skin. Inside of the body, for example, as I told you, in the stomach, imagine that this is a stomach, which doesn't look like a stomach, but doesn't matter. And this is the lining the surface body, this part. You know why? Because it has a kind of contact with the materials from outside of the body. Surface body or body surface, it's not always about the skin. It could be the lumen, it's better to say, in the human body that they have a contact with the other things. For example, imagine that this is our heart. Okay, and the innermost layer of the heart, it has the contact with the blood, right? Imagine that this is part of its muscle and everything, and this layer, it has a contact with the blood. So remember that it must be covered by a kind of epithelial tissue because it has a kind of contact with other stuff. So that's a very important thing to remember. That's a very, very, very important thing to remember the definition of the body surface. So covering and lining the body surface is the main location and function of the epithelial tissue. But when we cover or line the body surface, we are discussing about protection, as I told you, in the skin. We are discussing about absorption in the digestive system, reabsorption in the kidney tubules, secretion, as I told you, in the GI tract. We call it gastrointestinal tract, the same name as digestive system. So remember, this one is important. And in the structure of the digestive system, we have unicellular exocrine glands. We have very, very small cells, and each cell, it works as a kind of gland, and they will release substances, and that's a very important thing. One of the main functions, they release mucus. It's not for this topic, okay? It's not for this class, but later we will discuss how it works. But before going to the other things, I want you to remember something. We have glands in the human body, okay? But we have two types of glands. One first type is endocrine, and another one is exocrine. What is the difference between the endocrine and exocrine? What do you think? What is the difference between the endocrine glands and exocrine glands? Any ideas? Which one is duct? Imagine that I'm your student and I just need a very complete explanation. And I just don't understand it by ducts.
Maybe endocrine release like it releases it into the blood and exocrine releases it outside.
Exactly. That's the difference. That's the way, and we make the difference between endocrine and exocrine glands. If they give you kind of definition of the gland and they will ask you, okay, determine the type of the gland. If you want to determine endocrine glands, remember always they release the hormones or chemical substances into the bloodstream. So this is a very, very important thing. And for the exocrine glands, they release the chemical substances into the special ducts that they have. So if you see a gland has a duct, remember all the time it's exocrine. Okay? And in the endocrine system, we will discuss more about the glands. But I want you to remember this one because later in the digestive system, later in the other topics before the endocrine system, we are going to discuss about the glands. So I want you to remember. And other functions of the epithelial tissue that we discussed. But the feature of the epithelial tissue here is very important. And I want you to remember one of the key features of the epithelial tissue, we say that extracellular matrix, ECM, extracellular matrix, is very small or it's completely missing. It's very important to remember. Why? Because later, when we discuss about connective tissue, you will see this specific feature there, and you can see the extracellular matrix. It's not small or it's not completely missing. If you have a question, what is the extracellular matrix? Imagine that I have three cells. Two cells is not enough. Three cells, right? And each cell has a cell membrane. You know what is the function of the cell membrane? To separate the cell structures and contents from the outside. But around these cells, we have a kind of fluid. It's not always liquid type. Okay, sometimes it's jelly-like. We'll discuss about it today. And sometimes it's kind of liquid, and it depends on the location in the human body. This is a kind of fluid that we call it extracellular fluid, or sometimes they call it extracellular matrix. Both of them are correct. This extracellular fluid in the epithelial tissue is missed. We will discuss why. That's a very important thing because it brings one of the main functions into the epithelial tissue. So at this moment, we know that there is no extracellular matrix. And between the cells, there's a kind of connection. We call them junctions. Okay. When we have a connection between two cells, in biology, we call them junctions. And the specific type, very specific type of junction, or the type of the connection between the cells in the epithelial tissue is tight junction. Okay, tight junction, it helps to pack the cells. Wait a minute. You mean that, imagine again we have three cells. I'm going to pack them together, something like this, okay? And I'm going to connect them because we have to connect the cells. So when you pack the cell, there is no extracellular matrix between them. So extracellular matrix is missed. Why? Because we have many tight junctions between the cells. So if they ask what is the main reason that we don't have extracellular matrix, or it's I mean the majority of the extracellular matrix is missed, what is the main reason? The main reason is junctions between the cells. I will discuss about junctions today. I will give you a kind of explanation about it, and later we will have more details about it. And some of these epithelial cells, they have cilia or microvilli. These are the very specific structures that we can find in the epithelial tissue, and I will discuss more in details about these two. If you don't know what they are, no worries, we are going to talk about them. But one thing is important to me. When we go to the slide of the microvilli and cilia, I will mention it again. But something is very important to me is that you have to know the locations that we can find them. Microvilli, it can be found in the small intestine and kidney tubules, and cilia, it can be found in the upper respiratory tract and female reproductive system, especially in the fallopian tube. So We will discuss about these two more, but I want to discuss about extracellular matrix and junctions first. Do you have any questions? No questions. So, we say that extracellular matrix is missed. Why? Because we have tight junctions. I want you to look at this structure. This is one cell, okay, and this is another cell here. And you can see these cells are connected to each other by these specific structures, right? And also, you can see that these cells are connected to the other layers, which is basement membrane, and these are another type of junctions. Guys, in general, we have tight junction, we have desmosomes, we have gap junction, and hemidesmosomes. Adherence, adherence junction, it can be categorized as a part of the tight junction, but we are not going to discuss about it in details about this one. But for these four type of junctions are more important to me. If they ask you what is the tight junction, what is the function of the tight junction? Tight junction is responsible to attach the cells together. Okay, so it attaches the cells together and it forms a layer of the cells. So it's about physical attachment of the cells. We have another type is desmosomes and hemidesmosomes. If you really want to know what is the difference between desmosomes and hemidesmosomes in general, not in the details, because it's not a very, very detailed topic for us, to be honest. Later in the histology, you will read more about it. Remember, hemidesmosomes is the half of the desmosomes. What is the function of the hemidesmosomes and desmosomes? They are mechanical junctions. You know, do you remember I told you, let's go back to this picture. I told you that epithelial tissue, it's connected to the basement membrane. How? With desmosomes. With the help of the desmosomes, those specific junctions, the cells are connected to the basement membrane. So the mechanical stability, it's coming from desmosomes and hemidesmosomes. But when the cells are connected to each other to form a barrier, form a layer of cells, we call it tight junction. And tight junction, it pushes the cells to stand next to each other, something like this. So it removes the extracellular matrix, as you can see here. So we have the tight junction. We discussed about the desmosomes and hemidesmosomes, and another one is the gap junction. Gap junction is a very specific type. You know, cells are connected to each other, right? There is a kind of junction that forms a kind of way to transport the materials between the cells. And the type of the junction which is responsible to form these channels to transport the cells is gap junction. So gap junction is responsible to form a kind of pathway to transport materials. And these materials, it shouldn't be always cytoplasm, enzymes, or some nutrients or other things. It could be the electrical impulses as well. You know where we can find gap junctions in a very, very huge number? In the heart. Later, I will show you how it works. But remember, a very specific part of the human body that we can find the gap junction is the heart, because electric impulses are transported in different parts of the heart. It has different pathway. It starts from SA node, then AV node, bundle of His, Purkinje fibers, and after Purkinje fibers, for the very, very last stage, for the cells which are in a very deep structure, it helps with the gap junction. So these are the junctions that you have to know. I don't want you to know their details at this moment because later we will discuss about it, but I want you to know the functions. So one more time, tight junction is about attaching the cells physically. Desmosomes and hemidesmosomes is about mechanical attachment to the other structures beneath the epithelial tissue. And gap junction is about transporting the materials, electric signals, cytoplasm, nutrients, glucose, proteins, enzymes, other things between the cells. So these are the main junctions that I want you to know. And there's a table here. I made a table. Later you can read about it, but it's about all the things that I mentioned. And later we will discuss about junctions with details. At this moment, I don't want you to know. Any questions about junctions?
I have always a question about the table about of junctions. So
Uh-huh.
in the table, it's written in Latin. Do you have to know the Latin name for that?
At this moment, no. Yeah,
Mhm.
this moment. No.
Mhm.
And
Hi.
yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Are tight junctions only present in the epithelial tissue?
No, 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 no. Tight junction is the type of the junction which is very prominent in the epithelial tissue. It's possible to have it in other parts of the human body, but very, very prominent part of the tight junctions can be found in the epithelial tissue.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. For example, gap junction, it's very prominent in the heart. So these are the things that you have to remember. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Um, so gap junctions are not that common in the epithelial tissue.
Not very common, but I cannot say that it's not possible to find them. Okay. Because
Okay.
there is a kind of chance that they can be found. Later in the heart, we will discuss how the gap junctions work. Majority of them are between the muscle part of the heart, and we will discuss how it works later. Okay?
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, uh, what's the difference between tight junction, the desmosome, and hemidesmosome? They all connect them, right? The
Tight junction doesn't bring the flexibility. Right now, take your finger, put your on a skin, and try to move your skin. And you see that your skin is not detaching or grab your skin and push it. Your skin is not detaching from the other structures, right?
yes.
That's the reason. One of the functions of the desmosomes and hemidesmosomes, it connects your epithelial tissue to the structures below this structure. Tight junction is about the cells just next to each other.
Oh,
Okay?
okay. Thank you. I got it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So, could an example of a gap junction be the plasmodesmata in plant cells?
In the plant cells, uh, in the plant cells, I think in the between the plant cells, we have another system. It's not gap junction. I'm not fully aware of these plant cells, but that one, as I remember, because the last time that I read about plant cells is many years ago, and I don't think that one is a gap junction, but I can check this one. I'm going to write it and check it later.
Okay, thank you.
And, Tomorrow ask me, okay? Tomorrow ask me about this one. And about the plant cells, you don't need to know, but tomorrow ask me. Okay, okay. Any other questions? Okay, okay. So let's go back to first slide. You want to understand this is structure. This picture is very important. And when we understand this picture, the rest of the epithelial tissue is going to be easy. No, 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 no. This is the skin, right? What we have many layers of skin. Imagine that you're, I don't know, you're playing football or another sport that's your favorite, and you will get injured. The thing that will happen, a part of your skin is removed. So there is no layers of cells, right? What will happen? Bacteria or harmful substances easily can pass and go inside of your body. At the end, if your body is not strong enough or the bacteria is a very specific type, it's going to be infection and the rest of the story. But you can see many layers of cells. In the normal condition, the bacteria, most of the time, they cannot pass through the layers of cells. Why? Because bacteria must move between the cells. But when we have tight junction and there is no extracellular matrix between the cells, the bacteria has a very, very low chance to pass through the layers of cells. That's the reason we have tight junction. It's correct that the epithelial tissue, it covers the outer surface and lining the cavities in the human body. And one of the main reasons is that we are going to form a layer of cells. It could be one layer of cells, it could be 100 layers of cells. It depends on the location. But all of the epithelial tissue, they have the protection function. Why? Because cells are connected to each other by tight junction, and we know that there is no extracellular matrix, so there is a low chance for the bacteria to pass through the cells. That's the reason we have tight junction. That's the reason there is no extracellular matrix. Imagine if there is a kind of layer of cells, something like this. Okay, what will happen? The bacteria will move easily between the cells, and the chance of the infection will be higher, higher, and higher. Okay, so that's the reason in the features of the epithelial tissue when we discuss, we say that we need the tight junction, and the tight junction will remove the extracellular matrix. Why? Reduce the chance of entering the harmful substances. It could be bacteria, it could be virus, could be other things. Important thing you have to remember. Okay, is it clear? Any questions? If it's clear for you, and right now we understand what the function is, we understand how it works, why we have tight junction, why we don't have extracellular matrix, we have to discuss about the types of the tissues. If you understand the previous slide, this slide is going to be very easy for you to remember, and you have to remember one thing. Where is the location of the epithelial tissue? That's the question that we must answer. It's correct that epithelial tissue, most of the time, it has protection, but it has other functions as well. In general, epithelial tissue is divided into two types. Type number one is simple epithelial tissue. Now, type number two, it's compound epithelial tissue. What is the simple epithelial tissue? Definition is very clear. Always, you know what? It has only one layer of cells. So always, it's only one layer of cells. We call them simple epithelium. In the compound epithelium, or for you, I want you to remember this name more than the other names in this category, which is a stratified epithelium. Remember that it has more than one layer. It could be 5 layers, it could be 10 layers, it could be 100 layers. So we have the compound, or it's better to say a stratified epithelium, and we have the simple epithelium. So something must be different here. Before going and discuss about one layer or more than one layer, let's discuss about the types of simple epithelial. It depends on the shape. When the cells are flat cells, okay, we call them squamous epithelial tissue. And if you want to have the full name, it's going to be simple squamous epithelial tissue. When you have the cells, which they are cube cells, they're very cute cells, and we call them simple cuboidal cells. The cells, they look like cubes. When the cells are very tall and they look like column, we call them simple columnar epithelium. And we have another type, which is pseudo-stratified epithelium. I will tell you what it is, but I haven't seen that they use this name in the IMAT exam, but I will tell you what it is. Later, when you go to the first year of a school and you have to study physiology, sometimes physiology, but most of the time first histology, you will see this pseudo a lot, and I will tell you what it is. But most important ones for us, it's simple squamous, simple cuboidal, and simple columnar. We're going to discuss about them in details today. But also, at the same time, we have a stratified epithelium. If we have lots of layers of flat cells, it's going to be a stratified squamous. If it's cuboidal, lots of layers of cuboidal, it's going to be a stratified cuboidal. But why we have two types of epithelial tissue? Epithelial tissue, which has two types, it has two main reasons. When we have many layers of cells, what do you think? Why we should have many layers for cells for the epithelial tissue? The reason is protection. You know, when we discuss about the skin, it's not one layer of cells. It's not enough. The bacteria, the virus, or in general harmful substances, they are strong enough to pass through one layer of cells. So, if we have a kind of location in the human body which has a contact with the outside, it must have layers of cells. If the bacteria can pass through the first one, in the second one, we are going to catch it. In the third one, in the fourth one. And you have no idea how this stratified epithelial tissue helps you to survive. So the moment that we have a stratified epithelial tissue, remember the main function is about protection. But why we should have one layer epithelial tissue type as well? What is the reason? The reason is about helping the transport, right? Helping transport. What do you mean helping transport? We discussed that epithelial tissue, for example, in the digestive system. Imagine that this is your large intestine, okay? And this is your small intestine inside of the structure. In the small intestine, we have one layer of epithelial tissue in the structure. And when you eat something, absorption of materials happens in the small intestine. And right now, let's think about it. I want to absorb something. Your body is very smart. I believe in this in many ways. Your body is very smart. It always chooses the way to lose less energy and get the highest rate of efficiency. So you know what will happen? Your body is going to think that if I, for example, have the glucose, and glucose should pass one layer. For example, I need 1 ATP. It's just an example, okay? But if I want to pass it through 4 layers, I need 4 ATP. Why should I have a stratified epithelial tissue in the small intestine? So for the transport of substances, I'm going to choose only one layer of cells. And I keep these 4 layers for the parts of the human body that I need the protection. So we have one layer epithelial tissue to help the transport of substances, like nutrients, like some stuff in the blood even. We have the transport in the, for example, for the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the lung. So you can see the reason of the one layer epithelial tissue is helping the transport of substances and give less energy for this type of transport. Many layers is about protection. So that's the reason we have 2 types of epithelial tissue. Transitional epithelial tissue, which is a part of the compound, is the moment that the layers of the cells, they move, they remove, and it can be thicker and thinner. Okay, it's not for the IMAT. I haven't seen that they use this name for the IMAT. But what is pseudo? Pseudo stratified epithelial. Every time when you hear pseudo, remember that it's fake. It means fake. In a very, very simple way, we call it fake. Fake stratified epithelial tissue. It means that we think that it's a stratified epithelial tissue, but it's not. Look at the shape of these cells. In the histology, when we look at the shape of the slide, we can see that, oh, one nucleus is here, another one is here, another one is here, another one is here. You think that this is one layer of cells and this is another layer of cells. Due to the irregular shape of the cells, you think that it's a stratified epithelial tissue. But look at the structure. It's only one layer of cells. Okay, it's only one layer of cells. So first time, or if you are a very amateur person, if you look at the slide, you think that it's a stratified, but when you count the nucleus per each cell, you can see the shape of the cells is irregular, so we call it pseudo-stratified epithelium, fake stratified epithelial tissue. So remember about this pseudo-stratified as well. If you see the name, I don't think that they use it for the IMAT, but for the first year of medical school, for sure you will hear about it. Any questions? So these are the types of the epithelial tissue. Before going and discussing details about each of them, I want to show you about microvilli and cilia. Each cell has different surfaces. Okay. One surface, which is the top of the cell, which is here, for example, and then this is the layer that we have, and this is the top of the cell. We call it apical surface. So this is apical surface. The side that the cells are connected to each other, we call it lateral surface. And the side that the cell is connected to the, for example, other layers, we call it basal surface. So we have the apical surface, we have the lateral surface, and we have the basal surface. These are the surface of the cells that you have to remember. For example, and if I asked, for example, about tight junction, you say that the tight junction can be found with which surfaces of the cells? You have to say lateral. For example, desmosomes or hemidesmosomes is in the basal surface and the other layers in the human body. So these are the surfaces that you have to know. But why we have this slide? We have this slide because of these microvilli and cilia. I want you to remember something about these two. First thing, microvilli. It has a very specific definition, and in the definition, we say that they are finger-like projections on the very apical surface, not on the lateral, not on the basal, on the apical surface of the cells. So I have a cell which has microvilli. It's finger-like projection. What is the function of this microvilli? When you have the cell without the microvilli, and this is the layer of the cells, imagine, the surface that you have contact with other substances is only this one, because these cells are connected to the other cells as well, and it's impossible to contact with the other substances. But the cell with the microvilli, it has this surface. So what is the function of the microvilli? The function of the microvilli to increase the surface area. When you increase the surface area, you will increase the absorption. You will increase the reabsorption process. There's a higher chance to get that glucose into the cell, but it's lower for this one. Why? Because it has less surface to contact with the outside. So remember about the microvilli. Finger-like projections and responsibility is about increasing the surface. So I told you increasing the surface for what? For absorption, reabsorption. So where we have absorption mainly in the small intestine. When do we have reabsorption? We have it in the kidney tubules. So I want you to remember the locations of microvilli. In the small intestine, in the kidney tubules. You have to remember. And there's a specific term. There's a specific term that you have to remember. The cells that they have microvilli, we call them brush border cells. So if you hear brush border cells in the book from a teacher, in the exam, in a video, remember it's just the epithelial cells with microvilli. That's the important thing that you have to remember. And this is an example of microvilli. Another thing, it's cilia. When we look at the cilia and compare the structure of the cilia with microvilli, we can say that the structure of the cilia is smaller, it's shorter. But again, they are on the apical surface, but there is a connection with the basal body, which is in the basal membrane of the cell. But remember, they are shorter than microvilli, and they are again appear on the apical surface. Maybe you say that, okay, we have them on the apical surface. Is it about increasing the surface area? The answer is no. If we want to increase the surface area, we will use microvilli. Cilia is about helping for the movement. It can be found in the upper part of the respiratory system and the wall of the oviduct only in the female body. Remember, male body obviously doesn't have oviduct, so it appears only in the female body. But what is the upper part of the respiratory tract? Guys, I'm not a really good one to draw something, so you're not allowed to make jokes, but imagine that this is the head, okay? And this is your nose. It looks like a bird, but it's fine. And then it comes down, then it goes to lung 1, lung 2, left and right. So imagine that this is the pharynx. This is the level of the pharynx in the human body. Below the pharynx, we call it lower respiratory tract. Upper the pharynx, we call it upper respiratory tract. Mainly, it's about the nose. It's about the oral cavity. Imagine that this is the oral cavity and some parts of the pharynx. So in the nose, probably you know that we have some hairs, right? These hairs, when you go to the deeper part of the nasal cavity, you can find the cilia. The air that we breathe, it has harmful substances. It has some bacteria, it has some viruses, the small viruses, bacteria, and dust and other things. They shouldn't go to the deeper layers. So the cilia, with the help of the mucus layer on them, they will catch those harmful substances. And imagine that the harmful substances is this red one, and we have to kick them out. We shouldn't keep them. So cilia is responsible for the movement. By the contraction and other steps, cilia will move them to the outside. So cilia is responsible, cilia is responsible to the transport of some harmful substances, some kind of substances that your body thinks they are harmful to the body. So it's in the upper respiratory tract. So I want you to remember the meaning of the upper respiratory tract for this moment, and later in the respiratory system, next block, I think, we will discuss about the structures in details. So you will see a real picture, not this a piece of art. And in the wall of the oviduct, in the female body, when the egg cell or ova, it's released, it's very, very big and fat cell. So it's really difficult for the cell to move. So in the wall of the oviduct, we have the cilia to help the movement. So this is about cilia and macrovilli that you have to know. And later, when we go to the systems, again, I'm going to discuss about them. Probably I will ask questions that time. Say that, hey guys, what do you think about cilia? What do you think about macrovilli? What is the function? And I'm sure you will tell and you will answer those questions, right? So, do you have any questions about microvillia, cilia, or surfaces of the cell? Nothing? Okay. Now I want to discuss about types of epithelial tissue that we discussed, but I want to give you details. Why? Because you have to know the location. About the simple squamous epithelial tissue. Simple squamous epithelial tissue, we have flat cells as we discussed, and it's a very common type for transporting in the human body in different locations. You know, we can find them in the air sacs of the lungs. In the lung, a very, very last stage, when we want to transport the air with the blood, we have air sacs. Another name for the air sacs is alveoli. You have to know it. If you don't, later in the respiratory system, we will discuss about it. Look at the air sacs. It starts from this layer. Can you see the previous layer of the air sacs? It has two layers, so it's stratified. But inside of the alveoli, we have only one layer of cells. Cells are flat. These are not epithelial cells, so don't consider them as epithelial cells. Later we will discuss what they are. But can you see only one layer of cells? And they are transporting the oxygen and carbon dioxide with blood vessels. Look at the structure of the blood vessels. Blood vessel has only one layer of cells as well. Cells are flat. Why? We want to make the transport faster, better, spending less energy. So it must be simple squamous epithelial tissue. So in the structure of the alveoli and also in the innermost layer of the blood vessels, we have epithelial tissue, which is simple squamous epithelial tissue. This is a very, very important thing to remember. Innermost layer of the blood vessels. Next block, first class of cardiovascular system. I will discuss about blood and blood vessels, and I will discuss about this structure with more details. But layers of the blood vessel, we have tunica externa, we have tunica media, and we have tunica intima or interna. Remember, tunica intima it has epithelial tissue. And the type of the epithelial tissue is simple squamous epithelial tissue. Why we should have epithelial tissue in the in the innermost layer of the blood vessels? Why? We have the connection with the blood here. We have the contact with the blood here. So it's lining the lumen. So that's the important thing to remember. Also, we have it in the heart. I will discuss about it, and layers of the lymph vessels. These are the locations that we have simple squamous epithelial tissue. You have to remember. What is the function? Transporting, exchanging of the nutrients, waste materials, and gases. Any questions? Next one is simple squamous epithelial tissue. Tube cells, right? Very, very important location to remember, kidney tubules. And also thyroid glands. In the thyroid gland, which is in the neck of the human body, we have circular structures, right? It's a circle. Can you see cube cells? They're very cute. And later, when you go to histology, you will see very, very beautiful slides of the thyroid gland. And the name of the circle is follicles. So we call them thyroid follicles. Not a very, very important and difficult thing to remember. And also we have in the ovary surface, in the salivary glands, in the oral cavity. If you don't know what it is, just remember when you see your favorite food or you smell it, you have a kind of fluid in your mouth. It's coming from in your salivary gland, especially when you are hungry. Uh, Remember about the kidney tubules. Kidney tubules, if you look at the structure, you can see different types of epithelial tissue. But generally, majority of the epithelial tissue type in the kidney, it's simple cuboidal. Let's see, cuboidal epithelial tissue, okay? In some books, we say that, oh yeah, the first part is simple cuboidal, then it's irregular, then it's going to be flat cells. It's not for us. We are not discussing about histology. We are talking about the biology of the human body, and generally, the kidney tubules, it has simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. That's the thing that you have to remember. Let me show you one thing. Uh, no, it's not this one. This one is a kind of fancy picture of the epithelial in the follicles in the thyroid, but it's a very, very beautiful shape. Maybe at the end of the class, if you really want, I can search it and show you. Another type is simple columnar epithelial tissue. It's very specific one. Why? Because it can be found in a very specific location in the human body. First thing, before going to discuss about the location, can you see the location of the nucleus? Nucleus usually is in the center, something like this, right? But the center, the nucleus of the simple columnar, it's close to the base of the cell. And important thing, where we can find it, in the digestive system. In the digestive system, we can find simple columnar epithelial tissue, especially with the microvilli. So microvilli, one of them is with simple columnar, another one in the kidney tubules is with simple cuboidal. So these are two locations that you have to remember. We have microvilli. And these are the types of simple columnar epithelial, simple types in general, simple columnar, simple cuboidal, simple squamous. You have to know the locations and you have to know the main functions. For example, columnar is about absorption. Cuboidal here in the kidney is about reabsorption, and in the follicles of the thyroid is about secretion. Later we will discuss about this one. And in the squamous is about exchanging the nutrients. But you can see in all of them is about transporting something, right? And the last type of epithelial tissue that we want to discuss is a stratified epithelial tissue. Several layers of cells. This is a histology slide. You can see many layers of cells. You can see many nucleus, and we call it a stratified epithelial tissue. And probably it's from the skin. This one, the structure, it looks like the skin. And we can find it in the skin. We can find it in the esophagus. Right. Remember, people think we have a simple columnar or simple squamous type of epithelial tissue in the esophagus. I will tell you why. We can find it in the vagina, we can find it in the rectum, in the excretory ducts of the salivary glands, not the structure of the glands, the ducts of the glands, and also in the male urethra in general in penis. But why esophagus? Also oral cavity. Because oral cavity, it has the contact with the outside. For two reasons, esophagus must have a stratified epithelial tissue. The very first reason is that there is a chance that the bacteria, viruses are still with the food. When you chew it, you want to send it to the stomach. From a stomach, story is going to be different because we have the acid that they remove most of them. But the moment that we are transferring via esophagus, we have some problems. There might be a kind of infection if it's only one layer. Another thing, imagine the food is too solid. You didn't chew it very well, it's too solid, and it has some rigidity as well, and other things. And when you are swallowing, it can hurt the wall of the esophagus. If you have only one layer of cells, it can hurt it easily, and you will have ulcer, you will have other infections. So that could be a kind of problem. So that's the reason in the esophagus, we need a stratified epithelial tissue to protect it. So you can see, even in some deep parts of the human body, esophagus is not very deep, but you have to remember, in even deeper parts than the skin, or for example, other parts that they have the contact with the outside, we should have a stratified epithelial tissue to protect the body. Any questions for the epithelial tissue in general? And also you have a table as usual. Any questions? Nothing? Okay. This is all things that you have to know about epithelial tissue. Unfortunately, the books that we use, they don't have a very, very good explanation for the epithelial and connective tissue. So this class is important, and also the videos that we mentioned in the planner. So remember, it's important. Next tissue that we want to discuss today is connective tissue. Right now, I want you to be awake and try to compare with epithelial tissue. Okay? This is a real picture of the cartilage. And cartilage is very, very beautiful as well, like thyroid gland. But let's discuss about connective tissue. We have different types of connective tissue in the human body. For example, the fat tissue, we call them adipose tissue. We have blood. You say that, oh, blood is a kind of connective tissue. Say that, yes, blood is a kind of connective tissue. For example, we have dense and loose connective tissue. We have cartilage. We have the bone. So these are the parts of the connective tissue that we have to discuss today. But before going and discuss about each type, like epithelial tissue, let's discuss about features. So functions of the connective tissue. For example, when we look at the blood, what is the function of the blood? Blood is transporting something, right? What is that something? Substances. It could be hormones, it could be proteins, it could be some harmful lipid molecules, it could be many things. So one of the functions of the connective tissue is about transporting the substances, is specific for blood tissue. We have adipose tissue. It stores the lipid molecules. We have some structures such as loose and dense connective tissue, and I'm going to mention something important about them that you need it until the end of the physiology classes. We have the bone and cartilage for the support and structure of the human body, and also protection again with the loose and dense connective tissue. Loose and dense connective tissue are very important, and you have to remember them very well. But when we compare the connective tissue with the epithelial tissue, we can see that connective tissue is everywhere. For example, epithelial tissue in specific locations that we want to cover or line something, but connective tissue is everywhere, especially loose connective tissue. Connective tissue, unlike the epithelial tissue, it has lots of extracellular matrix. Look at the blood, it's fluid, and it has cells in the plasma. So extracellular matrix, it's a lot, it's really huge. And the extracellular matrix could be liquid, could be solid, or it could have some jelly structure. We will discuss about it. And also, we have lots of vessels. We call it vascularity of the connective tissue. It's more developed when we compare it with compare it with the epithelial tissue. In the skin, you don't have blood vessels, but in the connective tissue, it's more common. So these are the features, and you have to know the differences between epithelial tissue and connective tissue. Any questions? Guys, I have a question. Do you think we have junctions, for example, in blood? What do you think? Do we have junctions in the blood? For example, it could be tight junction, it could be hemidesmosomes or desmosomes, it could be gap junctions. Do we have any ideas?
I don't think there
Yes.
will be options.
Okay, Gabriela, what was your answer?
Yes, I don't think there will be junctions because if the purpose in the case of blood is to transport, I think that the junctions will limit the amount of things that can be transported.
Okay. Another, you mentioned something. Yes, sir. Who was that?
Also, yeah, I think it's yes.
Why?
Because blood has epithelial cells, so there must be junctions, no?
Okay. So one yes, one no. Any other opinions?
Let's say I might be wrong, but I would say that yes, there are junctions. Maybe because of the blood cell, itself, it should have it's built of something, and probably it has junctions.
Okay. Any other opinions?
Can I?
Of course we can.
I think maybe the extracellular matrix is sufficient to hold the cells together.
So it's a yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Any other opinions? Guys, I need opinions. Think about it. Go ahead, Alex.
Also, for me, I think it's a no.
For you, it's a no. Why?
No, for the same things they also said because I think it's easier for the blood to transport things if they were tied together. They wouldn't be that efficient.
Any other things?
Well, I think yes, because in order to be able to transport something, it needs to have a certain structure.
Okay. Maria, let's discuss about the thing that you said. And okay, we have the blood. Okay, let me show the blood. This is the blood. And the cells, they want to move. There's a very important thing. We have two types of cells based on the movement. Some cells are fixed, like epithelial cells. Some cells are mobile, like the cells in the blood, like the sperm cells. Remember, in the mobile cells, we do not have junctions, because junctions will fix your position, will attach you to something, will attach you to the structures. But in the blood, not blood vessels, because I was talking about blood. There's no epithelial tissue, it's just full of cells and plasma, and which cannot have junctions because these are mobile cells and they have to move. So we cannot fix them in a specific part. If we fix them, if something like that, that's going to be a problem for the human body. Clear?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So the answer is no. The answer is no, we don't have, in general, tight junctions in the blood, or for example, between the sperm cells. The answer is no. Okay. Now we want to discuss about each type of connective tissue with more details. But for example, for blood, I'm just going to mention basic things because we will have a separate class about it. And I will talk a lot about blood. And it's a very special type of connective tissue. Why? Because this is the only type of connective tissue which is liquid. So your blood, majority of the blood, it's 55% composed of plasma. And 45% is about the cells, not only red blood cells, it's about cells. So 55% of the plasma. What is plasma? Plasma, 99% of the plasma is water. We have, for example, proteins. We have hormones. We have some specific factors. We have gas. We have the ions. So this is the plasma. And plasma is liquid. And remember, in the blood tissue, plasma is the extracellular matrix. Cells, we have white blood cells, we have red blood cells, also we have platelets. These are the three types that you usually call cells, because platelets are not real cells. Later we'll discuss. But these are the mobile cells, as I mentioned. There's no junction between them, and they can pass through the blood vessels and they transport something. For example, red blood cells are responsible to transport the gases. So this is the blood. And blood is liquid, as we mentioned. It's composed of plasma and formed elements. It means the type of cells. We have white blood cells, we have red blood cells, and we have platelets. What is the function of the blood? I think you know it better than me. So they're transporting the nutrients, respiratory gases, helps to keep the body temperature constant, and play part in the defense mechanism of the body. How they play a part in the defense mechanism? By transporting the white blood cells to some specific parts to protect the body. What is the nutrient here? Nutrient, it could be ions, it could be proteins, it could be glucose, it could be other substances that your body need. So we have to give it to the blood to transport it to different parts of the human body. Respiratory gases, you know the red blood cells. They are responsible to carry the oxygen, carbon dioxide in general, and also help to keep the body temperature constant. When the blood it transport in different blood vessels and it brings the glucose, it brings the oxygen in the cellular respiration, a part of the glucose, I mean majority part of the glucose, it will be converted to the heat. It gives the cells a kind of high temperature comparing to the outside. So it helps to keep the body temperature constant, and also the movement, also the direction of the blood into the different blood vessels. It can increase the blood pressure, or it's better to say, keep it constant. So this is about blood. You have to know about this one, and later about the blood we will discuss more. And one more thing, the last line, I want to mention that Female body, it's about 5 liters. Male body is about 5.5. And last year, I had a kind of student who just came saying that all people, I mean, all male have 5.5. The answer is no, it's the average. It depends on the body size, it depends on the age, it depends on the rate of the forming the cells and the blood, it depends on the activity. It depends on many factors, but the average is about 5.5 for male body, 5 liters of blood for the female. No, the average, other things are not important. The next type of connective tissue is adipose tissue. Guys, adipose tissue, it's the part of the human body that when you see it in the mirror, you have a kind of shame and you want to go to the gym. So when you see that, you say that, oh, it's the time to go to the gym to burn all those hamburgers, pizza, pasta, or the other things that I decided to eat. I think good decision, I believe. And it's time to go to the gym. Yes, that's adipose tissue. And my question is, what kind of lipid molecules can we store in the adipose tissue? We discussed about it last week, so it's time to what kind
Triglycerides.
one more time.
Triglycerides.
Triacylglyceride, exactly. Fat molecules, right? We discussed about it last week. So I assume that you know it and you're sleeping instead of not knowing that and listening. So we have the adipose tissue. We have the fat molecule or triacylglycerol in the structure of the adipose tissue. Why? Because triacylglycerol is the type of the lipid molecules that we store in the human body. We had the phospholipid mainly in the cell membrane, and also we have the cholesterol for different things. We might have cholesterol sometimes in the adipose tissue, but cholesterol has a different story. I'm not going to open it right now, but adipose tissue, remember fat molecules or triacylglycerol, but adipose tissue. We have a very special type of cells. We call them adipocytes. So adipocytes. In the adipose tissue, we have adipocytes. But these cells, they don't look like other cells. When everything is fine, this is the shape of the cell. When you want to store the fat, this is going to be the shape of the cell. What will happen to the cell? This cell has a very big vacuole, and this vacuole is responsible to store the fat molecules. So when there is no fat molecule the percentage is very, very low, everything is fine. But when we store more fat molecules, for example, one more hamburger, another thing, you are not working out, for example, another problem, for example, some medical conditions, some other problems, you know what will happen? More fat molecules will go to the vacuole, and the vacuole will be bigger, bigger, and bigger. What will happen? It will push the nucleus and other organelles into the side of the cell. So this is a nucleus. This is a nucleus. This is a nucleus. What is this one? This one is a big vacuole with the fat cells. So remember adipocytes, they have another name. They call it ring cells. They look like the ring, right? So in the ring cells or in the adipocytes, we have a very big vacuole which is responsible to store the fat molecules. So we're going to store the fat molecules because adipose tissue, it's going to be formed around the body. It's going to be most of the time one of the outermost layers. It helps the body to keep the temperature constant. the heat or the heat of the body, it cannot be transported to the outside. It cannot be lost easily. So it's a kind of a layer. It's a protective layer for the heat inside of the body. So people who have a higher percentage of adipose tissue, they have this advantage in the cold weather. Also, especially some specific animals. And I wrote a sentence here that we will understand it in the cellular respiration. But I want you to read it. We say that humans store more fat in their bodies than carbohydrates. I think I mentioned it in the previous class. I don't really exactly remember because I don't have a transcript for each class, so it depends on you guys. If you ask more, I will tell more. But why we store more fat molecules than the carbohydrates?
Well, fat is better for energy storage.
Okay, Clara, you're right. Why? Imagine that I'm your student. Say that how did you figure out that fat it's better for this for the energy, for example?
I'm not sure.
Hmm?
I suppose it's with this it's because of the structure, but
So in which part of the structure?
I'm not sure.
Okay. This is the glycerol, 3 carbons. Do you remember it? And this is a 1 fatty acid. 17, imagine 17 to 20 carbons. This is another fatty acid, 17 to 20 carbons. This is another fatty acid. Imagine that it's unsaturated. Again, for example, 14 carbons. I can get energy from this one. Another thing, I have glucose. I can get energy from glucose, which is the carbohydrate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, something very important here that Clara mentioned, and it's correct, is that it's about the structure. That's correct. But how do you define that? Look at the numbers of bonding between the atoms. You know what will happen in the cellular respiration? In the cellular respiration, the purpose of this process is to break the glucose into the smaller components. Why we should do that? You know, breaking the linkage or bonds, you know what will happen? Breaking the bond in biology, chemistry, or something, it releases energy. So, now, what do you think? We have a glucose with 6 carbons. I know that we have the hydrogen OH groups, doesn't matter, because here we have hydrogen as well. But I have 1 glucose, I have 1 triacylglycerol. Which one has more bonds? This one. So this is the monomer, this is the monomer. So if I break this one, will I get more energy? The answer is yes. Why? Because I can break more bonds in the structure of triacylglycerol. So the chance of receiving energy from triacylglycerol is much more higher than the carbohydrates. So the rate is higher. But still, carbohydrate is the main one due to some health issues with the fat molecules later. But remember, fat molecules, they can release more, but still glucose is the main. Keep it in your mind, and later in the cellular respiration, the last slide, I will tell you how the fat molecule will release energy, not in details, only in one diagram, because that's the responsibility of your biochemistry teacher to teach you later how the fat molecules, they release energy. I can teach you as well, but you don't need it for the IMAN, so I don't think that's the right thing to discuss about in the classes. But you have to remember this sentence because it's from the book. So that's the reason. Clear? Any questions? Loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue. Look at the picture of the loose connective tissue. Look at the picture of dense connective tissue. Guys, what do you think? What is the difference between loose connective tissue and dense connective tissue? What do you think? I mean, from the names, from the pictures, I'm sure you have some opinions. Come on, let's go. One of you wanted to say something. Come on, go ahead. Be brave.
So like dense connective tissue,
Uh-huh.
it has more layers of fibers, maybe.
Exactly. More fibers. And then loose connective tissue, it's about less fibers, right? So, what do you think? Which one brings the strength to the structure? This one or this one? Which one?
Brings what?
Strength, power. I mean, the structure is much more stronger. A strength.
Oh, the dense one?
Okay, perfect. So it brings the strength to the structure. How about the loose connective tissue?
Brings flexibility, maybe.
Exactly. What a good word. I wanted to mention flexibility. So flexibility. Yeah. And you can mute it if you want to laugh. And the thing is, loose connective tissue, it brings the flexibility, and dense connective tissue, it's about strength. Now, what do you think? Which one is more common in the human body? Loose connective tissue or dense connective tissue?
Loose connective tissue.
Exactly. It brings the flexibility in different parts of the human body. Why? Because we don't need a strength everywhere. Loose connective tissue is the most common type of connective tissue in the human body. And I don't know that you have ever seen or not, but when you are going to buy, for example, meat, and you buy a fresh one, okay, not in the supermarket, not in different branches, the fresh one. Guys, did you see any very, very thin white layer around, for example, around some parts of the chicken? It's very, very thin. And around the beef, around the any kind of meat. Did you see any kind of that?
Yes.
That's connective tissue. That's loose connective tissue. You know, loose connective tissue is very thin, and it's responsible to keep the organs next to each other. So the outermost layer, this is very important. The outermost layer of most of the organs, they have loose connective tissue. Why? Imagine that this is your muscle, okay? And there's a kind of blood vessel in the middle. The blood vessel, the outermost layer, it's kind of connective tissue which binds the blood vessel to the muscle parts, to these parts of muscle. If we go to this picture, maybe I can show you. Yeah, this is the tunica externa, which is the connective tissue. It has the connective tissue with fibers. So this is the outermost layer part of the, for example, blood vessels, which connects the blood vessel to the surrounding. So if you want to connect the surrounding to each other, the organs in different parts, we have loose connective tissue. So loose connective tissue, that's the reason is the most common type, because it's the outermost layer of the organs. It's responsible to keep the organs next to each other, and it's very, very important. We don't need very, very strong structure. it must be flexible. It must be able to move some parts. For example, when you're running, uh, a small intestine, large intestine, other parts are moving inside of the human body. So there is a kind of loose connective tissue between all layers to don't change their position, but they can move. So that one is flexibility. We have less fibers when we compare it to what? To the dense connective tissue. So these two type of tissues are compared to each other. And when we look at the dense connective tissue, we have more fibers, as one of you mentioned, is about the strings, and it's very, very important to remember. But one thing, in the dense connective tissue, when we have more fibers, it means that we have less number of cells. In the loose connective tissue, when we have less fibers, it means more cells. But again, guys, we are comparing these two type of tissues together, not in general, okay? Not in general, because you have to compare something and say that, oh, it has more cells. For example, this guy is older, this guy is taller, shorter, so it depends. So dense connective tissue, it has many, many fibers, and it has relatively few cells comparing to the loose connective tissue. And when we can find it? We can find it in the tendons. We can find it in the ligaments. In the tendons and ligaments, these are the structure that we need the strength. We need the structures. These are the parts that we have fibrous capsules. And in the fibrous capsules, we have dense connective tissue. But what is the tendon and ligament? But maybe there's a question in your mind. What is the tendon? What is the ligament? Probably you have heard about it. But tendon, it's the connection, is a white part. It's the connection between the bone to the muscle. So there is a intermediate part. There's a kind of connector between these two parts, and it's tendon. It must be very, very strong structure. It must be flexible, but at the same time, it must be very strong connection, because losing the connection between the bone and the muscle, then you cannot have the movement. Not going to be done. So this is tendon. Ligament is that when you have two bones, a jelly-like structure must be here. We have the cartilage. Beside the cartilage, we have the ligament. So this ligament is very, very important. Why? Because it doesn't let the bones touch each other. If bones touch each other, you're going to have a really, really tough time. If you look at rheumatology hospitals, you can see many elderly people, they have problems with walking. Why? Because aging is one of the reasons that the tendons, they will be removed. It depends on the activity that you have. So remember, ligament is about connection between two bones, and tendon is about the connection, the muscle, and the bone. We need strength structures. Why? Because these parts are very, very important. They are connected to the movement of the human body. Any questions about the dense connective tissue and loose connective tissue?
Can I ask?
Of course.
So, can you say that loose connective tissue gives or holds the shape of the organ?
Forming the shape, it's more about keeping the structure. It's not that strong to form a shape. No.
Okay. Okay.
It's a very, very thin layer. Maybe I can show you after the class a picture of it if I can find, but probably I have to bring it from a human body or something. If it's kind of disgusting to you, so you can skip it. But at the end, if you really want to see a picture of the connective tissue, the loose connective tissue, I can show you later.
Okay.
Yeah. And let's discuss about cartilage. Any other questions? Cartilage and bone. The last two parts, of today's class. Is shorter than the previous class. But about the cartilage, we have a very specific type of cells. We call them chondrocytes. Chondrocytes, they can be found in a very specific type of extracellular matrix, jelly extracellular matrix. Cartilage is a very, very important structure between bones, between some specific parts, that they bring the flexibility. It brings the strength at the same time, but flexibility is the main reason that we have cartilage. For example, cartilage, there's a surface of the bones between the ribs in the chest cavity, very important one. Why? Because during the respiration process, it really helps us. Later we will discuss. And also in the nose, in the ear, the parts of the human body, that there is a high chance that they something will touch, we will touch something, or some uh, pressure or stress will be on them. So that's the important thing to remember about the cartilage. But most important thing is about the chondrocyte and jelly-like structures. About the cartilage, that's enough. You don't need to know more things. It's not very common for the IMAP. And the last thing is about bones. About the bones, we have to discuss more than cartilage. It has more structures, it has more details. First thing, bone, it has a solid extracellular matrix. So we have the dense connective tissue, loose connective tissue, close to solid, semi-solid, we can say. In the blood, we had liquid. In the cartilage, we have the jelly-like structure. In the bone, we have the solid extracellular matrix. So you can see extracellular matrix, it can be in different types. So if tomorrow morning I will write a question for your next weekly test and say that extracellular matrix in the loose connective in the connective tissue is always for example, solid. It's always liquid. It's always uh, I don't know, semi-solid. It's not correct. Why? Because it depends on the type of connective tissue. But connective tissue in the I mean the bones as a part of the connective tissue, they have the solid extracellular matrix, but something is important. They have calcium ions. Inside of the extracellular matrix, we have minerals, especially calcium ions. It's a very, very important one. So if they say which ion can be found in the structure of the bones, you have to choose calcium ions. Another way that they can say which compound can be found in the bones, you have to choose the compound which is coming with the calcium ions. Because sometimes we don't have only calcium ions, we have it in the form of, for example, CaCO3. It's just an example, or other types. So it must come with the calcium ions. The structure of the bone is very important. I will discuss about the type of the cells in the next slide, but in the middle of some bones, we have a very special part known as bone marrow. We will discuss about the function of the bone marrow later, but if you really want to know, we have stem cells. And the stem cells, these stem cells later, they will be converted into the different types of cells in blood. So cells in blood are coming from bone marrow. What is the stem cell? Stem cell is the type of the cell, very, very first generation of the cells of the human body, that they can be converted to anything, to anything. It depends on the factors that they affect on them and determine the way that they have to be differentiated and developed. So that's the definition of the stem cell for you. So in some of the bones, we have the bone marrow. Later we will discuss, but this is the source of the blood cells. And another function is about protection. For example, in the thoracic cavity, we have the ribs. For the brain, we have the skull. And also they help for the movement. That's one of the main functions of the bones. And also about the bone marrow, I mentioned about formation of blood cells, all types of blood cells, not only white blood cells or red blood cells. And about the type of the cells that we have in the bone, and in general, we can say four types: osteoblast, osteocyte, osteoclast, and bone lining cells. Osteoblast cells usually are the main types, and they are responsible to produce the matrix, that solid matrix. We call it osteoid, and it's responsible to store the calcium with the phosphate, but mainly calcium for you, in the structure of the bone. So when they say that which cell is very active for the formation of the bone, which cell is very active to store the calcium ions, you have to say osteoblast. Why? Because they are active during the bone growth and repair. Not only growth, also repair. Another type of the cell is osteocyte. Osteocyte is the mature type of osteoblast, and they are located in the bone matrix. They are the main type in the bone tissue. I mean, they occupy the space and they communicate with each other. They are not responsible to produce the matrix, but they are responsible to regulate the bone remodeling. That's an important thing. But again, formation of the bone matrix, the active cell is osteoblast. Another thing, uh, we have osteoclast. Osteoclast, it's the opposite to the osteoblast. Osteoblast is forming. Osteoclast is it's going to remove that structure, or it's going to say it's going to make it smaller. Okay, that's the important thing. Breaking down. That's the word that we can use. And for example, some people, they don't take enough calcium, so their body has take calcium from the bones. Osteoclast is going to be responsible for that, and it's for mainly calcium regulation, especially in the elderly people or people who don't have enough vitamin D, people who don't have enough they haven't spent enough time under the sun, and the other things. And we have bone lining cells, which are not very important for us, but they are very flat cells that are coming from the osteoblast, and it's about protection mainly. It's about protection the bone surface and exchanging the materials. They make it uh, easier for the bone. But again, the main cells are osteoblast, osteoclast, and osteocytes. The most mature type is osteocytes, and osteoblast forming, osteoclast breaking down the structure of the bones. Do you have any questions? Any questions in general, not only about the bones?
Can I ask,
Yeah, of course.
is lymph considered connective tissue, fluid connective tissue?
The concept of the leaf or the layers.
No, the lymph, the liquid.
You mean the lymph vessels, probably.
Oh, okay.
Generally, lymph, it's not like blood. It's not considered as connective tissue. Lymph is a fluid, and we can say that lymph is an extracellular fluid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
About the osteocyte, yeah. Any other questions before explaining the osteocytes again? Okay. Osteocyte, when we have osteoblast, it's going to be matured and they are going to be converted to the osteocytes. The responsibility of the formation of the bone matrix is osteoblast function. But osteocytes is responsible to regulate it because we have the bone matrix and we are not going to remove it easily. So regulation, the main chain, the mineral content of the, for example, the matrix, extracellular matrix, regulating the bone remodeling. How bone remodeling happens? Osteocyte is responsible to send signals to the osteoblast or osteoclast and to do the process. So that's the important thing. So mainly regulation of the bone remodeling and the extracellular matrix means that they are the main functions of the osteocytes. If you have a question, what is bone remodeling? Bone remodeling, it means that it's a process. Let's say it in this way. It's a process, and that old bone is removed. And at the moment that we are removing the old bone, we are going to make the new bone. Okay. So when we are going to remove the old bone, responsibility is going to be for osteoclast. So osteocyte will send a message to the osteoclast to say that, hey, remodeling the bone. So they are going to remove the bone structure. At the same time, it will send a message that to osteoblast to say that, hey, it's your responsibility to make the matrix and extracellular matrix in general, and it's about bone formation. So the process, the continuous process, it happens through the life. In the continuous process of formation of the bone and removing of the bone, we call it bone remodeling. And it's the responsibility of these three cells. This is the head. Imagine that this is the head. It gives the order, and these two guys will do the job. Clear? Any other questions?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Does osteoblast became osteocytes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
But
mature form of the osteoblast. Yeah.
and then don't the osteoblast at one point of the life of a human finish, like there are no more osteoblasts and they're all osteocytes, or they're like they recreate themselves from something, I don't know, from stem cells.
Okay, I got it.
So
Yeah, I got it. First thing, we have the death of the cells. And what was the source of the osteoblast? The source of the osteoblast was another cell. Let me write it. It's a kind of the pronunciation is very difficult. If it was mesenchymal cells, it was MSC. Yeah, MSC. I hope that I wrote it correctly. Just let me check. MSC cells. Okay. Yeah, mesenchymal cells. And these are the source of the cells for the bone. And after this one, mesenchymal cells, it will be osteoblast, and then it will be the osteocytes. The thing that you mentioned, and this mesenchymal is coming from stem cells. Okay, that one is going to be a long story, but the type of the stem cells is going to be endo and periosteum, because it's going from the Greek words. So it's going to be peri and ostome, I think the osteome, I think that's the way that we write it. You can check it later. These are the stem cells, and then they will be converted to MSC or mesenchymal cells. That mesenchymal cells, it will be osteoblast. Then osteoblast is going to be osteocytes. This is the pathway. I think that you mentioned, probably you are talking about people, elderly people, that the bone is breaking easily, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
That one has another reason. It could be from the cells, okay? But the thing is, that one is mostly about the matrix of the bone. The chance of breaking the bones in the elderly people is higher. Why? Because when you get older, especially after age of 60 to 65, later when you go to internal medicine, the doctor will tell you probably, but after 60 to 65, you will have some problems to absorb calcium ions, to have enough vitamin D. And when your body has problem, especially with the calcium ions, it needs calcium for something, right? Calcium is very important ion. Next week you will understand for the muscle contraction, every single time you need the calcium. So your body will send a message to the bone, say that, hey dude, we need calcium. Bone will say that I need the calcium for the bone matrix. Say that I know, but if I don't have this one, I cannot do the contraction of the muscles, and the body will be will have some problems. We'll take the calcium from the bone marrow, and you know what will happen? Imagine that this is the bone. The structure of the bone will start being empty. And when it's empty, we have a spaces. It's not filled, it's not solid structure anymore. I mean, we have some gap parts, and the chance of the breaking is going to be higher. If you have kidney problems, you will have problems with the vitamin D as well. And also it's going to be higher chance. So after 60 to 65, you have to take the supplements to be sure that everything is fine. You have to do the test. So the calcium ion is going to be very, very important. So that's the reason that we say that in the elderly people, the main reason. We could have other reasons as well. But the main reason is that breaking the bones in the elderly people, that's one of the main reasons, is that you're going to take the structure from the bones to protect the body. We call it osteoporosis. You really don't need to this one, but that's the reason that the bone mass is removed. But it has other types, for example, other reasons. For example, in female body, estrogen is the hormone which is very critical. It's vitamin D is also involved, the calcium is involved, uh, some types of medication. This story has a very long list, and it depends. But one of the main reasons is calcium and vitamin D. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Ligaments join bone to bone together, then how are cartilages joined to each other?
You mean the difference between the ligaments and cartilage functions in the bones?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this picture need to be cleaned. Ligament, as you can see here, this is ligament. Okay, this is ligament. This is ligament. Ligament is the space between the bones. But the joint, when we look at the cartilage and the structure of the joint, you can see the joint, they cover the ending of the bones. So they reduce the friction, they absorb, for example, the shock. It's not between them, it's just between the ending. Okay, it's about the bone ends in joints in general. So we can say the cartilage is the ligament, it's the connection between the bone to bone, and the cartilage, it comes to the joints when we have the bones and it covers the ends. So that's the difference between the ligaments and the cartilage.
Okay, thank you.
So the one that they keep the bones is ligament. Yeah. Any other questions? Or maybe I can share a better picture. Cartilage and ligament. You need a better picture. We don't have cartilage ligament. Maybe tomorrow I can find something from the anatomy books and I will show you. But at this moment I couldn't find. Oh, we are still recording.